and he didn't even believe in the ether physics. But basically, the theory is that there are all these onion-like layers in, for instance, the solar system of the sun's electrical energy, and the planets are traveling along certain lines of
it's almost
this.
like a toroid
Yeah.
shape.
And the planets are driving along it, and the momentum they possess is brought in by the electric current and the tubes of force, which are on the Earth. The aurora borealis, this Birkeland, had said, well, there's no way that we can have these huge magnetic currents on the ground unless there's a current of billions of amps flowing into the Earth of the North Pole. And so the aurora is actually a brush discharge. Now, the aurora borealis is not the same as the aurora australis on the other end. It's a cloudier thing. That's positive corona versus negative corona. Negative corona. Then Tesla invented his highest form of his coil was the single terminal coil, which he discovered, and he said, it's my way of creating DC current through induction. And what it does is it creates a high-frequency DC pulse. If you'll notice from those coils there, now he's got two on one circuit, you see.
Right.
Now that's...
You can point with the...
yeah, you've got two coils on one circuit. You've got this coil here and this coil over here. And then you look at these coils and you look here. Let's see, there it says P1, see?
Interesting
and
reference.
over here it says P2.
Uh-huh.
You know, so basically those are primaries, different primaries. And this, for instance, could be used. The only reason for having them in the same circuit is for a flying saucer. In other words, this
it doesn't
coil
make sense the way it's set up. I mean,
Right.
if you are
Yeah.
signaling, as the patent claims, system of signaling, you wouldn't have a wire that's connected for 300 miles to signal. It defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it's all on the same oscillator. He's running these things on one oscillator. Now, this one over here is the one we should be looking at if you can get it in the picture. All right, that's more interesting because there you see the P1 and P2 right there, okay? Now, that's P2. It's expressed a little differently, but they didn't have these terms.
Now, this is the P2
1890s.
that you described in relation to the Pyle-Toctor compass.
Yeah, and here
And
you got a
also-
rotary spark gap
Yes.
powering two different oscillators. And notice that this capacitor has fewer plates than this one. And that's because this one is going to be tuned to a quarter wavelength. This one's going to be tuned to a half or a full wavelength. This one will produce a DC pulse, the brush discharge, what I call a pseudo-electrostatic discharge. This one produces an alternating high-frequency current. This is used on the bottom or the back of the ship to destroy the inertia. This is used to create the momentum in the direction of travel. So you basically can accelerate the ship and turn it at 90 degrees with this system by controlling the discharges and a polarity on the surface of the ship. Now, this particular coil is, if you notice, the primary is around the outside, and so the voltage increases towards the center. The primary is also connected to the secondary, so that at the same time the current enters the primary and travels around this direction, the current is entering the secondary and from the same source and traveling around this direction.
That's an interesting.
And it's like it's really kicking out that pulse, you see.
Yeah, that's
and-
totally different than how we're taught to build our Tesla coils these days for
Yeah.
our little hobby kits.
Yeah. Well, see, Tesla
obviously
said
has
that
a purpose.
the DC electrostatic charge allows the ether carriers to enter easily into the ship, whereas in the high frequency, it tends to collect the positive ions around the opposite end of the ship, and the positive ions basically stop the flow of the ether. So you don't have any resistance to movement because there's no inertia being imparted. you have an imbalance of forces. You have inertia in one direction and a blockage of the ether carriers on the other, so they can do nothing but enter the ship and dissolve and impart momentum. Now, to make this possible, the Earth is emitting rapidly varying electrostatic forces of tremendous potential. And that rigidifies the ether in Earth's vicinity, which is why the Michelson-Morley experiment was false, is because the ether is stationary close to the Earth, but as you get further away from the Earth, the ether is more in motion. So if you tried to detect an ether drift close to the Earth, you wouldn't detect one. It's rigidified by the electrostatic forces and moves with the Earth, whereas outside the Earth's field, it's in relative motion. So the ether drift experiment was based on a false premise of a dynamic ether.
So somehow Tesla, or von Braun, I'm sorry, Wernher von Braun got a hold of this technology, and this is what he was developing in 1935?
See, Willy Ley was an expert on microwaves. He was the greatest expert on the microwaves maybe in the world in 1935.
And why would they need a microwave expert?
Yeah, why would they need a microwave expert? Now, what's interesting about Willy Ley is the government hired him in 1944. The Burke Aircraft Corporation moved to the environs of College Park, Maryland. And that, I believe, was the first American electropropulsive flying saucer project. That was after they discovered the Germans making these ships based on Tesla technology.
In Maryland?
And Maryland, it's right, College Park, Maryland, that's where the Goddard Institute is.
How about that? How cozy.
And the Space Flight Center. So that's a very high priority to some guy who writes science articles and poetry books for children about science, that was suddenly whisked away by the government after they realized that he was the only guy they knew who could tell them anything about this stuff. And so they hired him and put him to work right outside Washington, D.C. on some very high priority project.
So
Burke Aircraft Corporation of Georgia. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'd like to take a really strange jump here and talk about flying submarines. You included in your book an interesting chapter on flying submarines, ? You claimed that possibly the Germans had developed or used submarine tubes to create flying machines.
Yes. Well, it'd be perfect. I mean, weight is no object because the electromagnetic interaction is 10 to the 40th power times stronger than the gravitational interaction. So that means that a very tiny amount of electrical energy can pick up a huge object. And what triggered my awareness of this submarine pressure hull concept was a person I know and his daughter witnessed one of these ships. This man went to Albuquerque to pick up his daughter at an airport, at the Albuquerque airport. And when they began to drive back, this ship was hovering over their car all the way back to Santa Fe. He even followed them to their house. And he said that it had an old iron, what looked like an old iron ship's hull. He could see rivets on it, and it hummed like a diesel engine.
Apparently, these don't sound like alien spacecrafts from an advanced civilization.
Well, the ones in South America have been seen belching black smoke and making clanking noises. Probably some loose chain or something hitting the hull as they moved around, you see. I mean, but that would be perfect because the submarine pressure hull would be perfect for doing a prototype for von Braun's planned Mars mission because it contained a generator, all sorts of equipment you would need in a hermetically sealed environment. And the pressure hull is round, just like a cigar, and has slightly tapered ends on each end. And then around that, they built all of the, ballast tanks and other things, and conning tower and everything. But the basic tube is just a round tube like that thing right there.
Yeah,
and
this is a picture we have of what's called here early 50s cigar craft seen by Joe Fieri near Woonsocket, Rhode Island. And it's very similar to what you're describing.
Well, I have seen videos of a ship and exact same description has been seen a number of times. One time off of South Africa, another time in Virginia, quite a few times in Colorado, and I have a video of the thing up in Idaho. And you can see it's silver. It's like stainless steel. And you can see halos around the ship. And as it's hovering, the halos are stationary. You can see the peaks and nodes of the high frequency, you see. And when the ship moves this way, the wave nodes move. If the ship moves this way, the waves nodes move this way. And if it's moving this way, they move the other way. But these are quite visible. I mean, I've seen it on television many times, and now I have my own video that was taken by some associates of this ship, and I can see the halo and the waveforms on the hull, and so it's perfect, verification of what I'm saying about the Tesla technology. The ship that really proved it to me was I saw a ship at Hyde Park in 1996, in January 1996, while I was at the 10,000 Waves Japanese bathhouse, and I was sitting in the tub with 6 other people, and there were some other people milling around, and I saw this flashing object comes along, and I watched it for a while, and I said, that is not an airplane. And I said, that's a UFO. And this guy across the tub said, it's a plane. I said, well, if it's a plane, why did it just park? And I said, look, here comes another one just like it. And there comes another one, parks near it. And I said, as long as they flash, I said that flying saucers put out a faint glow when they're moving slowly. When they move fast, they light up brighter, and that's the reason they're moving so slow, and the flash conceals the glow. I said, if this thing were to fly fast, it would light up real bright. And the thing lit up. It was huge compared to the little flashes. It looked like a little plane, but when it lit up at arm's length, it was this long, which means at that distance, it was about 10,000 feet. It was 400 feet long, approximately, and about 250 feet wide, and about 50 feet thick. It was shaped like a football field, rounded edges on it, and the thing took off and did a circle. As everyone watched with their jaws dropping, and I followed it with my finger. I said, everyone see that? And they said, yes. And I followed it around. It took about 10 seconds to make its circle. And it was about a 30-degree angle. So at 10,000 feet, that was 2,000 miles per hour. Instant. And stopped on a dime. It took off instantly at that speed, came back, stopped instantly in the same spot, while the other ship was still there. And so it glowed a dark green color, and you could see the purple Tesla corona coming out from above on the top and in front of it, and the bottom screwed with a positive
negative charge.
Yeah, it's negative charges. That purple Tesla corona going out in the sky like this, and on the bottom was a positive corona. It's a dark green. They had apparently used quite a number of technologies to try to make that ship invisible. It wasn't supposed to be visible, but it was visible because of the weather conditions at the time.
So this idea of UFOs appearing and disappearing before people's eyes wouldn't be too hard to swallow if what is happening with this electrical corona is distorting the area around a ship.
Plus, they move instantly. This thing can move in. If you're perpendicular to the line of flight, you cannot see it at that speed. If it's close enough, you can't see it at all when it's moving as fast as it can move. So it appears to just they look like they're disappearing here and going over here. You see, they can jump around because you cannot see that ship when it's moving too fast. If they suddenly take off, it looks like they disappeared. All you see is it's gone. But they're just moving very fast. They can accelerate instantly.
So weight is no object.
Weight is no object.
Size is no object.
If you take a force, okay, if you take a stronger force, you can do a lot more work in the same period of time. Work is the ability to do work. I mean, energy is the ability to do work. Work is movement of a mass through a distance. Therefore, if you use a stronger force, you can do more work. in the same period of time. So if you use a force which is 10